There's a strange moment that happens to so many of us, when everything on the outside looks fine, but inside we feel like we're falling apart. You're doing what you're supposed to do, showing up, being responsible, even smiling when you don't feel like it. But when it gets quiet, when the distractions fade, there's this small, nagging ache that whispers, something's off. That whisper isn't a weakness. It's not a sign you're broken. It's your inner self calling you back to peace. In Buddhism, the Buddha taught that true peace doesn't come from fixing the world outside. It comes from understanding the world within. And that's exactly what we're doing in this video. We're going to explore some of the most powerful Buddhist wisdom for staying calm and positive, even when life feels overwhelming. Every section of this video builds toward a deeper clarity and inner strength, so please, don't skip around. Let this message unfold one step at a time. And if you find yourself resonating with what we're sharing here, if it feels like we're speaking to something real in you, there's one simple, free way to support this space we're building. Just hit that subscribe button. It helps this message reach others who may be feeling the same way. Let's begin. Some days it feels like your mind is running faster than your body ever could. You wake up already behind, thoughts spinning before your feet even hit the floor. Deadlines, arguments, decisions, all waiting for your attention. And before you even have a chance to catch your breath, you're already reacting, snapping at someone, panicking over a small mistake, zoning out in a conversation. It happens so fast, we don't even notice we're not present anymore. We just feel the weight of stress like an invisible fog. But here's the thing no one really tells us. You can interrupt that spiral. You can step out of that automatic, frantic mode, and the doorway is something you already carry with you every moment, your breath. In Buddhism, the breath is not just a biological function, it's a sacred tool. The Buddha taught that awareness of the breath is one of the most powerful paths to mindfulness. Why? Because the breath is always here, it's constant. It's the one part of your life that doesn't ask for effort. It just flows. And when everything feels out of control, focusing on the breath is like planting your feet in the ground. It centers you. It brings you home. The Buddha said, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. That's not just poetry, it's practice. The breath has the power to soften tension, clear the mind, and reconnect us with what's real. Think about it. When was the last time you truly noticed your breath? Not just in a yoga class or during a deep sigh, but in an ordinary moment of stress. Probably never, right? We're not taught to do that. We're taught to push through, to get things done, to figure it out later. But when you pause, just for a few seconds, and take one conscious breath, something shifts. You slow down, your shoulders drop, your heartbeat softens. That one breath creates a tiny pocket of peace, and that pocket is often all you need to respond rather than react. The beauty of this practice is how simple it is. No one even has to know you're doing it. You can be in the middle of an argument, a meeting, a moment of self-doubt, and still return to your breath. It's quiet, it's personal, but it's deeply transformative. In Buddhist tradition, this is part of what's called anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. Monks spend years refining this simple act because it trains the mind to stay anchored. It teaches us to ride the waves of life without getting pulled under. Now, I know sometimes people hear focus on your breath and think it sounds too basic to help with real problems. But let's not confuse simple with weak. The most powerful tools in life often seem deceptively small. One breath won't solve your crisis, but it will help you see it clearly. It creates space to feel, to think, to choose. And in that space, you reclaim control. That's how the Buddha navigated inner storms, not by forcing calm, but by returning again and again to the breath. It's the foundation of clarity, the beginning of peace. You know those moments when your mind just won't stop? Like it's stuck on a loop of everything that's wrong, everything that could go wrong, or everything that should have gone differently. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in traffic or lying in bed. Suddenly your thoughts spiral into frustration, regret, anxiety. It's exhausting, isn't it? What makes it worse is that we tend to believe those thoughts. We take them as truth, even when they're not. In Buddhism, there's a powerful teaching that reminds us the mind is like a garden, and whatever we plant, be it weeds or flowers, is what will grow. So if we keep watering negative thoughts, they'll take root and spread. But the good news is, we can choose what to plant. We can reframe our thinking, and in doing so, completely transform the way we experience life. Buddha said, "We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think." That's not just poetic, it's deeply practical. If you're constantly telling yourself, "I'm failing," or "nothing ever works out for me," you start to live from that story. You act from it, you expect more failure. But if you start shifting that inner dialogue, even just a little, you begin to make space for something new. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about learning to ask different questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is this teaching me?" That one small shift can move you from feeling powerless to feeling purposeful. This practice, what we call reframing, is not about sugarcoating reality. It's not about denying pain or pretending that hardships don't exist. Buddhism never asks us to turn away from suffering. In fact, it teaches us to face it head-on, with mindfulness and compassion. But it also teaches us that how we relate to our suffering makes all the difference. The same situation can break one person and strengthen another, not because the situation is different, but because their mindset is. Let's say you made a mistake at work. The untrained mind might spiral into shame. "I'm so stupid, I always mess things up." That kind of thought doesn't just hurt your self-esteem, it drains your energy and clouds your clarity. But a reframed mind would look at the same situation and say, "I made a mistake, yes. But what can I learn from this? How can I grow?" That mindset doesn't ignore the error, it just chooses to build from it rather than crumble beneath it. Buddha taught that the mind is the forerunner of all actions. That means your thoughts aren't just internal, they shape your choices, your moods, even the energy you bring into every interaction. If you want to change your outer world, you often have to start with your inner one, and reframing is a gentle yet powerful way to do that. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly things look different. The fear doesn't vanish, but it's not as paralyzing. The sadness may still be there, but it's not all-consuming. Reframing gives you perspective, and perspective is what allows you to act wisely instead of react blindly. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. The mind is like a muscle, and it needs consistent training. That's why in Buddhist practice, we cultivate right thought as part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right thought means recognizing when your mind is drifting toward resentment, fear, or judgment, and gently guiding it back toward kindness, clarity, and understanding. It's a practice. Some days it's easy, some days it feels impossible. But each time you notice a negative thought and choose not to feed it, you're building inner strength. You're creating space for calm and positivity to take root. There's this moment we've all faced, when something happens, and suddenly your chest tightens, your thoughts spin, and your emotions take over before you've had a chance to even process what's going on. Maybe someone says something that hits a nerve, or a plan falls apart, or an unexpected message sends your mood crashing. In a split second, your peace is gone, and you're caught in a storm of reaction. And later, when the dust settles, you wonder, why did I let that get to me? Why did I give it so much power over me? That's the kind of emotional chaos that sneaks into our lives, quietly but powerfully. And the truth is, no matter how grounded we try to be, if we don't learn how to relate to our emotions differently, we'll always feel at the mercy of them. Buddhism doesn't tell us to suppress what we feel. It doesn't shame us for having emotions. In fact, it honors them as part of the human experience. What the Buddha taught is something deeper, a way to see emotions clearly, to understand them, and to step back far enough that we're not controlled by them. This is the practice of emotional detachment, and it's not about shutting down or pretending you don't care. It's about becoming aware. It's about noticing when a wave of anger or sadness or fear starts to rise, and instead of grabbing onto it, you simply watch it. You breathe through it. You recognize it as something temporary, not a permanent truth about who you are or how the world is. Think of it like this. Your emotions are like weather patterns moving through the sky of your mind. Storms come, clouds gather, winds howl, but the sky itself remains untouched. You are the sky. You are not the storm. And when you learn to hold that awareness, something powerful happens. You stop reacting from panic. You stop saying things you later regret. You stop spinning stories in your head that only feed your suffering. Instead, you start choosing your responses with clarity, with compassion, with strength. The Buddha often spoke about attachment as the root of suffering. That includes attachment to our emotions. When we cling to a feeling, when we let it define us or dictate our actions, we give it control. But when we let go, when we observe instead of attach, we find freedom. That doesn't mean you'll never feel hurt or angry or overwhelmed again. It means those emotions won't drive the car anymore. They'll be passengers, not the ones gripping the wheel. And here's something else Buddhism teaches. Emotions are not enemies. They are messengers. When anger rises, it might be showing you a boundary that's been crossed. When sadness lingers, it might be asking you to slow down and process something unhealed. When fear speaks, it could be a sign of something unknown that needs your attention. But these messages are only clear when you're not entangled in them. Detachment allows you to receive the wisdom of your emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. Now, this isn't something that happens overnight. Emotional detachment is a daily practice. It begins with mindfulness, pausing, breathing, and noticing what's going on inside you without judgment. The Buddha taught sati, or mindful awareness, as the doorway to liberation. By practicing sati in emotional moments, you build the space between feeling and reaction. And in that space, you choose your response. You choose peace. You choose the truth. Emotional detachment isn't coldness, it's clear. It's the quiet strength that allows you to be present in difficult moments without being swept away. It's not a wall, it's a window. One that lets you see clearly, feel fully, and act wisely. And when you live from that space, peace is no longer something you chase, it's something you carry. Just like the Buddha said, attachment leads to suffering. Letting go leads to freedom. Some days it feels like life is testing you from every direction. Things go wrong that you didn't expect, people disappoint you, responsibilities pile up, and suddenly you're left wondering, why is this so hard? It's in these moments when your patience is wearing thin and your energy is almost gone, that your mindset matters more than ever. The Buddha didn't promise that life would be easy. He promised that suffering exists, yes, but he also gave us a way to walk through it with grace and clarity. That path begins not with changing the outside world, but with changing the way we see it. And one of the most transformative shifts we can make is learning to see challenges not as punishment, but as the very path we need to grow. Think about it. How many times has something painful later revealed itself as a blessing in disguise? Maybe a failure that humbled you and taught you resilience, a breakup that helped you finally see your own worth, a setback that pushed you towards something better. The Buddha taught that everything, even suffering, holds the potential to awaken us, not by avoiding pain, but by understanding it. In fact, the very first of the Four Noble Truths is that suffering is a part of life. But the second truth reminds us that it has a cause. And when we understand the cause, we can work with it. rather than be defeated by it. This is the heart of reframing, to meet difficulty with curiosity instead of resistance. We're often taught to see challenges as threats, as signs that something has gone wrong. But from a Buddhist perspective, challenges are simply the conditions of life revealing themselves. They're not enemies, they're messengers. Each one brings a lesson tailored to your path. And the beauty of reframing is that it doesn't ask you to pretend everything is good. It invites you to look deeper and ask, what can this teach me? That's a powerful question, because the moment you ask it, you shift from being a victim of your circumstances to a student of them. The Buddha used nature as a teacher. He spoke of water, of mountains, of trees, and one of the most powerful metaphors he gave us is the stream meeting the rock. He said, in the confrontation between the stream and the rock, the stream always wins, not through strength but through persistence. Life is full of rocks, challenges that feel immovable, but we are not here to smash our way through everything. We're here to soften, to flow, to adapt. Reframing means realizing that you don't have to resist the rock, you just have to keep moving with intention, with presence. And over time, the path becomes clear. When something difficult happens, it's easy to fall into the trap of, why me? But a more powerful question is, what now? Not in a rushed or forced way, but in a compassionate way. What can I take from this? What can I let go of? How can this help me grow stronger, wiser, more at peace? The Buddha taught that it's not what happens to us that defines us, it's how we respond. And reframing is an act of conscious response. It says, I see this, I feel this, but I'm going to choose how I carry it. It doesn't mean you'll never feel discouraged. It means you'll develop the inner strength to face that discouragement and still move forward. Over time, this practice of reframing builds something unshakable within you. You stop fearing obstacles because you begin to trust your ability to meet them. You stop looking for a perfect, challenge-free life, and instead you start building the mindset that can handle life exactly as it is. That's freedom, that's peace, not because life got easier, but because you got wiser. Some of the heaviest burdens we carry aren't physical, they're invisible. Thoughts, expectations, regrets, fears, things we cling to so tightly, often without even realizing it. And the strange thing is, the tighter we hold on, the more exhausted we become. You might have noticed it yourself, that feeling of being drained, not because of what you're doing, but because of everything you're trying to control, outcomes, people, situations. The Buddha saw this clearly. He taught that much of our suffering arises not from the events themselves, but from our desperate attempt to make life bend to our will. And yet life rarely works that way. The more we try to force things, the more we suffer. There's a deep truth in one of the Buddha's most powerful teachings. You only lose what you cling to. Think about that. Clinging doesn't protect us. It sets us up for suffering. It creates a false sense of control. We think if we hold on tightly enough to a relationship, a job, a belief, or even an identity, we'll be safe. But life is fluid. People change, circumstances shift. Control, in the way we imagine it, is an illusion. What we actually control is far smaller than we'd like to believe. But within that small space, we have immense power. The power to choose our response, the power to let go. Letting go isn't giving up. That's a common misunderstanding. Letting go is about releasing your grip on the things that are outside your power so that you can focus your energy on what truly matters. It's the difference between trying to stop the rain and choosing to carry an umbrella. You don't have to like the rain, but you can choose how to move through it. In Buddhist practice, this is often taught through the lens of upekkha or equanimity, a balanced state of mind that doesn't get caught up in the highs or lows, the gains or losses. It's a kind of steady awareness that sees life clearly and doesn't flinch. Now, this doesn't mean you detach from life emotionally or spiritually. On the contrary, it means you become more engaged, but in a wiser way. You stop wasting energy on what can't be changed and start investing it in what can. You begin to notice how much space opens up inside you when you stop trying to fix everything outside you. Your thoughts become lighter, your breath deepens, you start making choices, not out of fear or frustration, but out of clarity. Buddha didn't tell us to stop caring, he told us to stop clinging. And there's a big difference. You can still care deeply, love fully, work passionately, but without the need to control every outcome. This principle of letting go is also deeply tied to mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness, whether through meditation or daily awareness, we begin to notice the mental loops we get trapped in. The constant planning, worrying, replaying conversations, trying to manage everyone's perception of us. And in that notice, there's an opportunity to soften, to gently say, "This isn't mine to carry," to return to the breath, to the body, to the moment. Because the present moment is where your real power lives, not in controlling the past or predicting the future, but in how you show up right now. One of the simplest metaphors used in Buddhism is that of holding sand. If you squeeze your hand too tightly around a handful of sand, most of it slips through your fingers, but if you hold it gently, it rests there. That's the essence of letting go, a light, open hand, a soft gaze, a willingness to allow life to unfold while staying grounded in your values and your presence. Some days, it feels like everything is just heavy. Not because something big has gone wrong, but because your mind is tired. You wake up already overwhelmed, already thinking about what's missing, what didn't go right, what still needs fixing. And slowly, without even realizing it, your thoughts start spiraling. You focus on what's lacking, what hurts, what frustrates you. It's like your brain develops tunnel vision for the negative. That's not because you're a negative person. It's because your mind is trying to protect you. It's scanning for problems so it can keep you safe. But the problem is, when your attention is constantly going toward what's wrong, it becomes almost impossible to feel peace or joy. That's where the wisdom of gratitude steps in, not as a cheesy look on the bright side trick, but as a serious shift in awareness. In Buddhism, this shift is deeply tied to mindfulness and presence. The Buddha didn't tell us to force happiness. He taught us to notice the beauty that's already here. Gratitude in Buddhist practice isn't just about being thankful when life is easy. It's about finding a moment of appreciation even when life is messy, uncertain, or painful. And that's what makes it powerful. Gratitude isn't a passive emotion, it's an active practice, a conscious decision to look again, to open your eyes to what's good, even if it's small. You're not pretending that hard things don't exist. You're simply saying, yes, this is difficult, but here's what I can still appreciate. That shift doesn't erase your problems, but it changes how you experience them. It gives you a little more room to breathe, a little more strength to face the day. And in time, that small shift becomes a habit, one that gently rewires your mind toward peace. You don't need a perfect day to feel grateful. You just need to pause. Maybe your body is tired, but your heart is still beating strong. Maybe the week was hard, but you had one meaningful conversation that reminded you you're not alone. These are the little lights we forget to notice. The Buddha often reminded his followers that life is fleeting, uncertain, and precious. And when we treat every moment like something we're entitled to, we lose touch with that truth. Gratitude pulls us back. It says, "This is here now. Let me appreciate it before it's gone." That simple awareness can completely shift your emotional state. And here's the thing, gratitude is also one of the fastest ways to escape the grip of negativity. When your mind is trapped in complaint, in comparison, or in regret, gratitude is like opening a window in a stuffy room. You don't have to force positivity. You just breathe in a little bit of clarity. I'm grateful for this roof. I'm grateful I made it through the day. I'm grateful for the lesson in this pain. These small recognitions are like anchors in a storm. and over time they change your default setting. They help you meet challenges with more grace, more perspective, and yes, more peace. One of the easiest ways to start is by keeping a gratitude journal. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just 3 things a day: a good cup of tea, a moment of silence, the way the sky looked this morning. It sounds simple, but that's the beauty of it. Buddhism teaches us that truth is often found in the simple, in the overlooked. And when you begin to train your mind to see those small truths, you naturally begin to feel more grounded and content. Another powerful practice is to speak your gratitude out loud. Thank someone for being kind. Acknowledge a friend who supports you. Express your appreciation, not just in your mind, but in your actions. In Buddhism, gratitude is considered one of the highest expressions of wisdom. It connects us to the present and to others in a deeply authentic way. Have you ever met someone and just feel drained after being around them, even if they didn't do anything obviously wrong? Like their presence alone pulls something out of you. A subtle tension in your body, a heaviness in your thoughts. You leave the conversation more anxious, more doubtful, more scattered than you were before. That's not in your head. That's energy. And the people we spend time with, their words, their habits, their mindset, leave fingerprints on our peace whether we notice it or not. Buddhism speaks very clearly about this. The Buddha taught that we become like the people we surround ourselves with. He didn't just mean behavior, he meant energy, vibration, the state of our mind. If you want to stay calm and positive, the energy you allow into your space matters more than you think. This doesn't mean you judge others or walk around labeling people as toxic, but it does mean you begin to recognize what certain energies do to your inner world. Buddhism calls this awareness sati, or mindfulness, noticing with clarity what uplifts you and what drains you. Some people, even without saying a word, carry chaos with them. Others, even in silence, bring a sense of ease. It's not about perfection, it's about intention. The Buddha warned us that a bad friend can do more damage than a wild beast. A wild beast might wound your body, but a harmful companion, they can disturb your mind. And when the mind is disturbed, everything else falls out of balance. But here's the good news. Just like negative energy spreads, so does positive energy. When you surround yourself with people who are grounded, kind, present, you begin to absorb that. You start to breathe a little easier. You feel safer being yourself, your thoughts soften. That's the power of being around what the Buddha called kalyana mita, spiritual friends. These are the people who help you grow, who remind you of your values when you forget, who walk beside you with compassion and truth. You don't need 100 of them. 1 or 2 is enough. What matters is the quality of the connection, not the quantity. Now, I get it. Some people you can't exactly walk away from. Maybe it's a family member, a co-worker, someone you're tied to in some way. Buddhism doesn't ask you to run away from these situations. It asks you to bring mindfulness to them. Can you set boundaries without guilt? Can you protect your peace without shutting your heart? Emotional detachment is a Buddhist skill that helps with this. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you don't let someone else's storm drag you out of your own calm. You observe, you breathe, you respond gently, or not at all. And most importantly, you don't let their pain become your identity. It's also worth asking, what kind of energy do you bring into your spaces? This path isn't just about avoiding negativity. It's about radiating the kind of presence that heals others too. When you show up with peace, with kindness, with mindfulness, you become that kalyana mita for someone else. The Buddha said, "As a candle cannot light another without losing its flame, we too can share light without being diminished." You never know how your energy is impacting those around you. If you're serious about staying calm and positive, look at your environment. Not just your relationships, but your physical space, your digital space, your habits. Are you filling your mind with noise? Constant scrolling, shallow content, stressful conversations? Or are you giving yourself moments of quiet, of nature, of real connection? Peace isn't a switch you flip. It's something you cultivate, day by day, choice by choice. Sometimes the most powerful choice you can make is simply to protect your peace. Not by fighting, not by proving, but by returning to yourself again and again, with quiet strength and steady love. The Buddha didn't teach us to escape the world. He taught us to move through it with awareness, so we no longer lose ourselves in it. If this message spoke to something deep within you, there's another video on the screen now, waiting to guide you even further. Don't miss it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of Buddhist journey.